Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to Stop Motion Spookies. And for today's stop motion scary flick, we're going to be taking a look at a true Halloween classic, Coraline. So, odds are if you're watching this video at all, then you know what Coraline is. But for the, I don't know, three of you who don't know what this thing is, allow me to explain. Coraline is a film based on the book of the same name written by Neil Gaiman. The premise of the book is basically your standard Lotus Eater machine story about a girl named Coraline who finds herself entering what looks like another world where everything is better, but as she continues exploring the world, she quickly learns that it's all a trap, and it's mostly about her just trying to escape from this world and get back to her original. It's considered a very, well, creative and admittedly scary story, and here's a little fun fact about said story. Apparently when Neil Gaiman first wrote it, he showed it to his daughter, and when she finished it, it scared the piss out of her, but she lied to her dad and said that she liked it because objectively she knew that this was a good story, and if she had told her dad what scared her about it, then he would have changed things, and well, she didn't want that. As a result, the book was published, and it is a popular story. I have never read it myself. It's something that I'm always been curious about, but never really been kind of actively searching for. How I first heard of Coraline was through, well, the movie. I had seen it advertised on TV, seen it showcased, and it looked interesting. And I'm a sucker for Lotus Eater stories. I just love the idea of a false reality kind of trying to draw you in, only for you to learn that it's all just a trap. It's interesting for me and makes for interesting storytelling, especially since for those kinds of stories, the person, in order to escape from the trap, has to give up everything that they care about, has to give up everything that makes them happy to kind of accept their reality. I always kind of like those stories, and I like seeing them done. So Coraline, when I first heard about it, did catch my interest. Unfortunately, though, I never saw it in theaters. And this wasn't an example of, oh, I'm averse to scary stuff. No, it's just I never got around to seeing it in theaters. And as a result, how I was first exposed to the movie was via the DVD, as it was given as my parents got it for me, and I finally watched it through that. And needless to say, I missed out. I missed out hard. I really wish that I had seen this movie when it came out in theaters. And the thing is, the film is still very popular even to this day. In fact, at the time that I'm doing this recording, there are plans to showcase the film again in theaters on Halloween. So, yeah, clearly it's still getting an audience, because it gets a similar treatment to that every single year. But what about this movie keeps drawing people in? What makes people want to continue going back and seeing the tale of Coraline as she outwits a monster that wants nothing more than to trap her? Well, let's take a look at it and find out, as today we're going to be taking a look at Coraline. And of course, let's get through the long-ass plot summary. And of course, if you haven't been paying attention for the last 3 minutes, the main character of this movie is a girl by the name of Coraline Jones, whose parents are the authors of a gardening catalog, and they and Coraline have recently moved from their home of Pontiac, Michigan, into a little apartment called the Pink Palace Apartments, located in, I don't know which state. Yeah, I think maybe they mention it once in the movie, but for the life of me, I can't remember it. Point is, it's out of Michigan and away from everything Coraline knew and loved. And the Pink Palace Apartments are kind of a strange place, to say the least. I mean, it looks like a really nice. It's called the Pink Palace because it's essentially just a pink apartment building. Looks like a regular standard house, and it does have its fair share of strange denizens. As in the downstairs apartment, there are two old ladies by the name of Miss Pink and Miss Forcible, two former actresses who apparently used to do adult films or adult productions. I don't know. And in the attic, there is a Russian acrobat by the name of Mr. Bobinsky, or the Great Alexander Bobinsky, or Amazing Bobinsky, whatever. He wants to be called Mr. B. And he claims that he is the proprietor of a famous jumping mouse circus. We never see it, so it could all be in his head. I don't know. Point is, he's eccentric, and he seems like a nice guy, so he doesn't really get on my radar. But of course, as you do when you move to a new place, Coraline is trying to find, can't really get comfortable in her new position. As when she and her family move into the Pink Palace, she immediately tries wandering around and just doing her own thing, even taking a stick and using it as a dowsing rod to find an old well that's supposed to be located around the area. And while she does find it, she also runs into a local boy that lives around here by the name of YB Lovat, which is short for Wyborn. His grandmother actually owns the Pink Palace Apartments, and while YB is friendly and sociable, He also kind of lives in his own world and basically just doesn't know when to stop talking, which does annoy Coraline. However, as he and Coraline can get to talking, with him mispronouncing his name as Caroline, and he's not the only one, he mentions how he's surprised that his grandma let Coraline and her family move into the Pink Palace, because apparently Wybie's grandmother never rents to people with kids, and apparently she does not let Wybie go to the Pink Palace because it's supposedly dangerous, which is a little strange, but before Wybie can kind of elaborate on these things more, his grandmother calls him and he has to leave. No, he does end up showing Coraline where the well is, and it's very hard, and it was very easy to miss, as it's kind of in the middle of a grove of a circle of toadstools, and it was buried under dirt, so if we didn't know where it was, you probably could have fallen into it, because, yeah, the well is just literally covered up by a wooden door apparently the well is so deep down, well, let me put it this way. Coraline drops a pebble in through a hole, and it probably takes, like, I think, 10 or 20 seconds before the thing ends up falling into the water. Unfortunately, though, after Wybie ends up leaving Coraline, he drops a little tidbit on her that she should have been privy to before. The dowsing rod she was using to find the old well? It was poison oak. As a result, Coraline develops a rash. As such, from there, the movie cuts to later as it's either the next day or later that evening, I have no idea, but it's begun raining at the Pink Palace, and Coraline's developed a rash on her hands from the poison oak. And while Coraline wants to try and engage her parents, mostly because she wants to go outside gardening, her parents aren't really kind of taking the line, so to speak. Mostly because they're working hard to try and finish the gardening catalog, and as a result, they're still a little bit overworked, and combined with the move, they're not exactly there's basically too much on their plate, and while they would love to spend time with their daughter, they just don't have that time. Not helped by the fact that apparently Coraline's mother sustained an injury while they were moving when she wound up backing into a truck, and now she has to wear a neck brace, so, that's pleasant. As such, while Coraline does keep bugging her parents, eventually they do manage to get her off their back, as her father tries telling her to just, go around the house, count all the doors and windows, list everything that's blue and all that stuff. However, before Coraline can begin her search, her mother ends up giving Coraline a present. Apparently, Wybie stopped by earlier because he found something that he thought would interest Coraline, and when Coraline opens up the present to see what it is, it's a doll. A doll that looks almost exactly like Coraline, with buttons for eyes, but yeah, it's a dead ringer. It has her hair. It has a raincoat she likes to wear. It creeps Coraline out a little, but she does carry the doll with her as she explores the house. And as she continues on, eventually as she begins listing all the stuff her dad wanted her to list, her search eventually leads her into, I guess, the den, so to speak, as she puts the doll down and counts all the doors and windows, and even lists a painting of a kid in a blue suit who's crying because he dropped his ice cream. But as she goes to pick up her doll again, she finds that it's somehow moved to a corner of the room. And when Coraline goes to check on it, she finds that in that corner of the room is a door that's kind of hidden behind the wallpaper. Also a dresser, but let's be honest, that could have been anyone that did that. As such, Coraline ends up going to her mom because she's a little curious about this door and wants to know what's behind it. And while Coraline's mother wants to mainly focus on her work, she ends up conceding to her daughter's demands, if just to get her to leave her alone. As such, they end up ripping the wallpaper around the edges of the door, and Coraline's mom manages to find the key to the door, a black key with a button at the end, which does make her to raise an eyebrow, but it is a fit as she manages to use it to unlock the door and open it up. Only to find that on the other side is just nothing but bricks, leading to Coraline's mom thinking that they just apparently this was boarded off when the house was divided. Though Coraline does at least wonder if that was the case, why is the door so small? But her mom doesn't really care because she wants to get back to work, so she just throws the key back into the drawer of other keys and goes back to work while Coraline's a little disappointed. There, the film cuts to later at dinner time, as apparently Coraline's dad does all the cooking, and apparently he's a shit chef, and so Coraline doesn't want to eat his food, and as a punishment for that, she's sent to bed early without dinner. As such, Coraline kind of laments that she's still in a strange place, even looking to a picture of her friends who gave her who dressed up a big sign, kind of sending her off, so promising they'll come to see her, before she ends up going to bed. However, that night as Coraline sleeps, the little door opens up, and we see what looks like, I want to say, paper cut-out mice just drifting out of it. And while Coraline sleeps, she ends up hearing a squeaking, and when she goes to see what the source of the noise of the squeaking is, she finds a bevy of mice running throughout the house. Coraline ends up chasing them, and they end up running back to the door, and when she opens it up, she finds that it's not that the wall behind it isn't bricked up anymore. Rather, there's a weird glowing blue tunnel, which Coraline's a little curious about, and as you do when you're a kid, she ends up crawling through the tunnel and finds another door on the other side. And when she goes through that door, she finds that she's back in the den. Sort of. While it looks very similar to the den that Coraline came from, it's clearly not the same place, especially when she looks to the painting of the boy who was crying about his ice cream. The painting is now of that same boy, except he's happily licking his ice cream up, which is strange to Coraline, but her thoughts are immediately brought elsewhere as she smells something cooking. And when she goes to the kitchen to see what's going on, she sees what looks like her mother making something, and while she initially asks what her mother's doing here, well, when her mother turns around to see her, she finds that she isn't her mother. Mostly because this mom has buttons for eyes, which Coraline points out. The woman does confirm that, yeah, she isn't Coraline's real mother, but rather her other mother. And she basically is inviting Coraline to have dinner and even tells Coraline to go get her other father and let him know that supper's ready. And sure enough, there is an other father here. Only, while he does look similar enough to Coraline's real father, let me put it this way. Her real father had slick back hair and he looked more tired, whereas this one is more energetic, has more wild hair, wears an orange bathrobe and orange bunny slippers, and he plays the piano instead of typing things up. And it's a player piano, too! Not even kidding. It's literally the piano has little ejectable gloves that fit right on his hands and can play the piano for him, which he demonstrates as he uses the piano to sing a song for his daughter. As such, once the song is over, Coraline lets him know that dinner's ready, and the family sit down. With Coraline happily eating up all of her other mother's cooking. And yeah, I'll give credit where it's due. The food looks fucking delicious. But yeah, Coraline seems to be rather enjoying herself as all the food is delicious. Her other parents seem more than welcoming. She gets her own drink, and when she's done eating, or more specifically, when she pauses from eating and her mom just takes away her food, she's presented with a cake. She's presented with a cake that says basically it says welcome home, which confuses Coraline, but her other parents confirm that apparently they've been waiting for her for a while, and they're more than happy to play games with her, as apparently the other mother is already ready to play a game of hide and seek in the rain, no less, and even says that Coraline doesn't need to worry about the mud, something that her real mother objected to when Coraline said that they could go gardening in the rain. And well, the other mother says that even the mud from outside can be used for a multitude of things, including healing poison oak, which confuses Coraline how her other mother knew that. But Coraline, getting slightly overwhelmed, decides that maybe she should go to bed. And so she's brought to her other room, which is a lot nicer than her real room, as all of her toys are alive, seem super friendly. Even the picture of her friends that she has is alive, as her friends in the picture are actually happy to see her and ask her where her Swampers and Chook are, which I guess translates to her raincoat and boots. Either way, she's put to bed, though her other mother does slather some of the slime on her poison oak rash, and she ends up going to sleep. And well, when Coraline wakes up, she's back in her real room, making it look like the whole thing was a dream. However, there is proof that the dream really happened because Coraline's poison oak rash is seemingly gone. As such, when she goes down for breakfast, she tells her parents about the dream, but they write it off as just that, a dream. Though her dad does at least kind of joke around with it a little, as when he hears about the magic mud thing, he asks if she can help him get some of that stuff because he's got a terrible case of writer's rash on his ass. I don't know, it's funny, and it even ends with her mom telling her dad to shut it and go and get his pages wrapped, so it's fun. Either way, but after breakfast, Coraline's mom, to once again get her off their back and to try and bring her back down to reality, says that maybe she should go see Miss Spink and Forcible and tell them about the dream, which Coraline ends up doing, but as she goes out, she finds that there's a bunch of mail outside for Mr. Bobinski. She brings it to him, and we get a little back and forth with him as we establish his character, but as Coraline leaves to go see Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, Mr. Bobinski heads her off because he says that his jumping mice have something that they wanted him to tell her, namely, to not go through the little door, which confuses Coraline because, well, again, from her perception, the other world was just a dream, it was bricked up. But the fact that he knew about it at all does confuse Coraline, and it's not made any better when she does go to see Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, which in turn also allows her to meet their dogs, which are adorable. I want to hug them all. except the dead ones, which they have stuffed. I don't think I could do that. And while she's sitting down drinking tea with them, Miss Spink ends up telling her that, asks her if to read her future via her tea leaves. And the future she presents is apparently not a good one, as she says that Coraline's in terrible danger, and when she sees the tea leaves in actual shape, it looks like a very peculiar hand. As such, this further creeps Coraline out, and she basically excuses herself before she can tell the old ladies about her dream, where she ends up running into Wybie outside, and the two of them just kind of chat. And it's here where I should mention another little tidbit about this movie that I really should have brought up earlier. Wybie has a cat. Sort of. The cat's actually a feral cat, but it's friendly, as apparently Wybie and this cat do hang out sometimes. He does feed it, and in return, it gives him snuggles and apparently brings dead things to his window. And he and the cat are hanging out now as they're hunting for banana slugs, and from here, Coraline and Wybie do get to talking, as Wybie does talk, as Coraline asks him more about the doll, because obviously she would wonder, did he make the doll look like her? But no, he confirms the doll just came looking like her, and apparently he found it in an old trunk in his grandmother's place. So it's strange that his grandma would have a doll that looked like Coraline. However, as Coraline and Wybie are having this conversation, the cat reacts to something as we see the doll seeming to watch the pair of kids from the upstairs window. From there, as such, eventually Wybie has to go on his way, as once again his grandmother calls him, and that night, Coraline decides to leave a little trap out, as she leaves Cheddar outside of her room, and when she goes to sleep, she once more is roused when mice come and take the Cheddar. And once again, when she chases after them, she finds the door that leads to the other world is open again, and she once more travels through where she sees her other mother, who is now dressed in much nicer attire, and even thanks Coraline for bringing the Cheddar. As such, she sends Coraline out to the garden so she can get her other father, only at this time they're not calling him other mother and other father, they're just saying your mother and father, whatever, my point, whatever, it's just a subtle thing. When Coraline goes out, we see that Coraline's other father is actually making a full garden that's just full of all these lush plants, all this great life, all these unique colors. And at one point, Coraline's other father has to save her from I guess snapdragons, I think, that end up coming to life and tickling Coraline. It's adorable. But to essentially add the extra cherry on top of this sundae, Coraline's other father gets her on board his, I guess, tractor that looks like a praying mantis. And when they fly above the garden, it turns out it looks exactly like Coraline's face, which again amazes her. As such, once that's all done, the pair of them go back inside and stuff themselves with food, and while Coraline's other mother says that she and her other father will clean up, she can go see Mr. B, who's apparently invited Coraline to a show with his jumping mice. And she even says that Coraline doesn't have to go alone because her friend will accompany her, resulting in the other mother revealing that this world has a Wybie as well. Only this one doesn't talk, so Coraline's happy with that. Either way, Coraline and the other Wybie end up going to Mr. B's apartment, and sure enough, the place looks like a circus. It's got a little circus tent, it's got cotton candy cannons, and what was an actual regular chicken in the real world is now a popcorn dispenser that just looks like a chicken. So hey, whatever. Either way, Coraline and the other Wybie sit down and enjoy the jumping mouse circus, and it's fun, spectacular, and all that nice jazz. And so after Mr. B bids them both farewell, Coraline and Wybie go back into her place, and once again, Coraline goes down for a nap, once more waking back up in the real world. However, Coraline this time leaves the other world feeling a lot more excited and happy, and as she runs back down to the den to try and open the door, only to find that it's locked. As such, the film then cuts to later as Coraline and her parents are going out to mostly drop off the pages of the garden catalog that her parents finished so they can be published, and likewise to get Coraline's school clothes, which they're just basic drab uniforms, though Coraline is interested in a pair of orange and black gloves that her mother immediately tells her to put back, so, that's not fun. But as Coraline and her mother are driving home, since her dad was the one that was dropping off the catalog pages, well, Coraline begins asking her real mom if she wonders what's in the other apartment, which her mother just kind of brushes off, saying that whatever it is, it's probably not a family of Jones imposters. So, which Coraline asks, well, then why'd you lock the door? And it turns out that Coraline's real mom wound up locking the door because she seemed to find rat crap, and she was a little worried for her daughter's safety, and thus she decided that the door was best kept locked. However, Coraline, who again is still feeling all the tension from her parents not spending as much time with her, is just not happy with it. And so when she and her mom do get home, it's clear that her mom is now trying to put a little bit more effort into being with her daughter, because the thing is, part of the reason why she was keeping herself so distant from Coraline wasn't because she hated her or anything. It's just because, well, they moved, new place, new area, new people, which, like Coraline, her mom is probably just as shell-shocked as her, not helped by, again, the cast. And likewise, with the extra pressure of trying to get this gardening catalog finished, they really had to be laser focused, and sadly that meant that they had to, I don't like saying this, neglect their daughter a little, because if they wanted to live comfortably, they had to get this done. And so now that the job is done, Coraline's mom does feel like she's a little less irritable, as she is trying to connect with Coraline, but also clearly realizes that the damage has been done a little, as Coraline is still very angry at her, especially considering the incident with the gloves. As such, Coraline's mom tells her that she's going to head out now, that she needs to go food shopping, that she won't be back long, and that she promises once the catalog is published, then she'll make everything up to Coraline. But again, her daughter isn't really reacting. And as such, after Coraline's mom leaves, Coraline decides that if her real mom isn't going to be making her feel good, well, her other mother might have something for her. As such, she snoops around the house, and she does manage to find the key to the little door, which her mom hung up above a door frame. And when she does get it, she once more runs to the little door and opens it up. And to her delight, the other world is real, as the tunnel appears and Coraline crawls through. Though someone is watching her as she does, as we see the cat watching her from outside a window. As such, Coraline arrives in the other apartment, where she doesn't find her other parents, but she does find a stack of food just all arranged for her, including a new outfit that her other mother made for her, as well as an invitation to go see Miss Spink and Miss Forcible because they have something planned for her. As such, after Coraline gets dressed in her new clothes and then stuffs her face full of food, she goes outside to go to Miss Spink and Miss Forcible's apartment, only to run into the cat, which seems to have followed her. At first, Coraline thinks that this may be just another cat, like, there's the second of everything in this world. But no, this is indeed the real cat, because one, it doesn't have buttons for eyes, and two, it can talk. Okay, yeah, the cat can't actually talk in the real world, but for some reason it can talk in the other world, and the cat does confirm, yeah, it's the real cat, and part of the reason why there is no other cat is because, one, the other mother doesn't like cats, and two, it's just sort of a game the two of them play. She tries to keep him out, but she can't. He just comes and goes as he pleases. It's strange. It's clear this cat does have a bit more supernatural voodoo, not helped by the fact, which, yeah, it's kind of clear since this thing can fucking talk, but it seems to be able to just teleport around the area with ease, which is confusing Coraline. However, the cat does confirm to Coraline about all the warnings that she's been receiving so far. That this world is not a dream come true at all. This place is rather a trap, and the cat knows it for sure because the other YB told him, which confuses Coraline since he can't talk. But the cat does confirm that thanks to its heightened senses, it already can tell. But before it can elaborate, it runs off because the cat runs off because it heard something. As such, Coraline just brushes it off and goes to see Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, and finds that their entire apartment has become a lavish theater, with the dogs just sitting in the benches and watching the show. And as Coraline takes her seat with the other YB, the show begins, and it's a wonder, to say the least, as the other Miss Spink and Miss Forcible are doing a rather erotic show, even though they're old ladies. It's weird and somewhat uncomfortable, which I guess was the point. But it gets even funnier as both of them try hogging the spotlight and everything just goes to hell. It's hilarious. But despite this, the show keeps going as they end up doing a high dive, as they both try to do like an acrobatic high dive into a bucket of water, only for them to shed their old lady bodies and look like young women. And as such, they end up just swinging around the theater, quoting Shakespeare in a line that's in foreshadowing, in which, when you actually know context, really is just about mocking mankind. And as such, they pull Coraline into the fray, and they end up doing a grand finale with Coraline at the center of it, which Coraline is happy with. And as such, once the show is over, she and the other YB go out and meet her other parents who are waiting for them. And so Coraline goes off with her other parents into the apartment, though as she leaves, the other YB starts looking sad, which the only one that seems to notice is the other mother, And when she sees this, she just kind of lightly tries to get the other YB to smile. It's a little uncomfortable. But either way, as Coraline goes with her other parents into the dining room, they kind of muse that Coraline just seems to be loving it in this place, and if she wanted, maybe she wouldn't have to leave. She could stay here forever if she wanted. And as such, Coraline sounds a little excited about this as her other father talks about how they could just sing, play games, and her mother can cook her favorite meals. But before Coraline can stay, there's one little caveat to that. And as such, after Coraline takes a seat, they present her with a little present, and when Coraline opens it up, she finds a pair of buttons and a sewing needle. Yeah, apparently, if Coraline wants to stay in this world, she has to have buttons sewn into her eyes. The thought of which causes her to freak the hell out, as anyone would, as she does not want to have buttons sewn into her eyes. However, her other parents keep pushing it a little, or at least her other mother does, as they say that if they need a yes if they want her to stay there, if she wants to stay here. Coraline, however, is still not going for this, and she starts feeling a bit uncomfortable, especially when their other parents begin applying the pressure and even do the classic "it's your choice, but we only want what's best for you" line that some parents do. As such, Coraline decides, you know what, maybe this place isn't as great as I thought it was, and decides that she needs to leave. And considering that falling asleep before seemed to send her home, she thinks that if she goes to bed now, she'll be fine. Although before she goes to bed, her other mother and her other father say that they're happy to have her here, and that while Coraline doesn't want them to tuck her in, she says that they've done enough for her at all for her after all this. And the other mother says that she and her other father aren't worried at all, and that soon Coraline will see things her way. Yeah, this is getting creepier, isn't it? As such, once Coraline is out of eyesight, she just bolts back to her room, and she ends up stuffing all of her toys and the picture of her friends into a chest, because all the toys are trying to get her to consider staying, as they say, "What's wrong? Don't you want to play with us? And where's your buttons? Don't you want to stay?" At which, yeah, Coraline's just not going for any of it. She ends up throwing, like I said, she throws them all into a chest and uses whatever she can to barricade her door as she runs to her bed and just tries to go to sleep. And, well, while a sleep is eventually achieved, well, things don't go the way she wants, as when she eventually wakes up, she finds that she's still in the other world. As such, Coraline starts getting a little confused, and so she ends up further investigating as she goes back downstairs and finds her other father in his study just kind of lazily tapping keys on his piano. And when she asks her other father where her other mother is, well, her other father seems a little less energetic than he normally is, and says that all will be swell as soon as mother's refreshed. But before he can further elaborate, the gloves come out of the piano and seem to scold him and get him to shut up, with him even further stating that he's not allowed to talk unless the other mother is around. As such, Coraline decides, whatever, I'll go find the other YB, maybe he can help, only for the other father to tell her that he pulled a long face and that mother didn't like it, which caused the gloves to grab him and pull him back, which causes Coraline to freak out a little as she runs out of the apartments and just runs off into the woods, with the cat eventually catching up to her and asking her what she's doing. However, as the pair of them walk through the woods, she finds that the world is looking a little less together out there, as she finds that the trees start disappearing, fading away, the path literally vanishes, and she ends up walking into nothing. A big, blank, white void of nothing. Why? Because apparently the other mother didn't try putting anything in this part of the world. Mostly because she only put all of her effort into making the stuff that she knew would impress Coraline. And as such, Coraline begins wondering why the hell would the other mother go to all this effort just to get Coraline to stay. And the cat only offers one of two solutions, that either the other mother wants something to love that isn't her, or she wants something to eat. As such, this freaks Coraline out. Before she can muse on the answers, she and the cat find themselves back at the Pink Palace, as apparently the other world is a very small one, and they literally just walked around it. However, they end up hearing a little doo-doo-doo from a trumpet, as we see one of the circus mice come out and try and raising an alarm. And when the cat goes to get it, it ends up killing the mouse, to Coraline's horror. Only upon its death, the mouse turns into a rat. So yeah, we're finally shown that things in this world really are not what they seem. As such, Coraline decides that if she can't leave via sleep and leave via walking away, then their only option left is to try the little door again. However, the doors to the den are locked. While she manages to jimmy them open, she finds that the way is still barred as the den has now completely changed and is now a lot more bug themed, with the other mother just sitting in a sofa and happily welcoming Coraline in, even getting a chair to come up and seat Coraline itself. And while the other mother partakes in a bit of cocoa beetles, which are still alive apparently, Coraline demands that she be let go and she be allowed to go home. With the other mother just putting her hips or putting her hands on her hips and going, "Is that any way to talk to your mother?" And Coraline rightfully says that she isn't her mom, which offends the other mother as she tells Coraline to apologize for that. Coraline, being stubborn, says no, and when the other mother gives her to the count of 3 to apologize, her appearance begins changing as she looks less and less like Coraline's real mom and more like a witch. As she gets taller, her limbs get more spindly, and her face seems to sink in more. And Coraline reacts to this in utter shock, though unfortunately because of the shock it doesn't allow her time to run away, as once the other mother reaches 3, she grabs Coraline by the nose, drags her into the hall, and then throws her into a mirror, which is apparently a portal to a dark room, and effectively Coraline's put on timeout until she can learn to be a proper daughter, and yeah, Coraline is not happy about this. And she finds that her proverbial cell is not vacant, as she finds that in a corner there's a little bed, and they're clearly what sounds like children hiding under a blanket. And when Coraline removes said blanket, she finds the ghosts of 3 kids just kind of floating there. Excuse me one second. Apologies. But anyway, like I said, ghost children. So yeah, Coraline wants to know who these kids are, and apparently they're the other mother's other victims, or as they call her, the Beldam. So, yeah, it turns out Coraline was not the first person to fall victim to the Beldam, as we're going to call her now, trap. As these kids, like Coraline, all had lived in the Pink Palace once upon a time, and like Coraline, they were tempted by the Beldam, who, it turns out, spied on them via the doll. As it turns out, the doll that looks like Coraline, it looked like these kids once upon a time. And here's a little fun thing. When the movie actually began, we actually saw the Beldam remolding the doll to look like Coraline. And yes, it did look like one of these kids, a girl with pigtails. And basically, through the doll's eyes, the Beldam was able to spy on them and learn what was wrong with their lives. And so she managed to trick them into coming into her world and basically presented them with what looked like what they wanted. And basically every single thing that their hearts could desire, all for the sole purpose of luring them into this place and then convincing them to stay. And well, unlike Coraline, these kids fell for it hook, line, and sinker and allowed her to sew the buttons into their eyes. And well, apparently that was all that the Beldam needed, because once the buttons were put in place, it allowed her to essentially eat their lives. Yeah, apparently the Beldam likes to live on children's life force, and she can't do that if the buttons aren't in their eyes. And, well, when she says that these kids are gonna stay here forever, she meant it, because these kids are now fucking dead, and yet the Beldam is still not letting them go. Very possessive, that one is. And so Coraline realizes that if she doesn't get out of here, she will end up like these kids. However, as such, while she makes a statement about wanting to get out of there so that she can beat her and all that stuff, the kids make of Coraline one request, as they say that if she does get out of here, maybe she could find their real eyes, because if she can find them and get them away from the Beldam, and their souls will be free and they'll be allowed to pass on proper. And Coraline promises that she'll try, but before she can continue talking, something pulls her out of the cell, which, much to her shock, when she fights back against whoever pulled her out, she finds that it's the other Wybie, who is wearing this oven mitt that the Beldam had. And when she pulls the oven mitt off, she finds that the Beldam literally sewed his mouth into a smile. As such, she removes the ribbon that tied him up, that kept him smiling, but before she can ask if he's okay, he just shushes her and manages to usher her into the den as he gets her right to the door, and while they end up pushing aside a a cupboard that looked like a bug, which does alert the beldam that Coraline's out. And as such, the other YB tries ushering her through the door, though he basically makes it clear he can't go with her, as, well, it turns out he's made of sawdust. And, yeah, this is a common thing with everything in the other world, as everything here was made from something else, and we'll see what the other things are made of later. Point is, though, the other YB can't go with as much as he would like to, because, well, the other mother's gonna be a little pissed if she finds that the other YB helped Coraline escape. As such, after he pushes her through and shuts the door, Coraline crawls through the tunnel, which looks a lot less inviting now, as instead of glowing blue, it now looks old, decrepit, and full of cobwebs, but she manages to make it to the other side, and then she just closes the other door and locks it tight. As such, Coraline thinks that she's home free, that everything's all hunky-dory and fine. Only it's clear that something isn't right, as Coraline runs across her house trying to find her parents, but can't find anybody. She calls out to them, but no one answers, and likewise, when she eventually goes out to their car later to see if they're there, because, well, obviously her mom had to take the car to go shopping, instead all she finds is a pamphlet and her mom's cell phone. Which, yeah, this is starting to concern Coraline. However, in the midst of all this, YB ends up coming up because, well, he wants the doll back. Because apparently, the doll used to belong to his grandmother's twin sister. Which, yeah, that was mentioned earlier in the movie, but yeah, it turns out the grandmother's twin sister was the beldam's last victim. And, well, apparently, and it's implied throughout the movie that that YB's grandmother is fully aware the beldam exists and intentionally made sure that people couldn't move, that she was essentially starved out by making sure that no other children went there. And, well, she kept the doll, either to try and deprive the beldam of a spy, or just because the doll was a precious heirloom to her sister. Either way, she wants it back, and Coraline is happy to get rid of it. However, as she and YB can look through her house to try and find the doll, it seems to have disappeared, with Coraline just tearing the place apart trying to find it, while she continues explaining to YB, rather in pieces, what the beldam's whole plan was. And of course, YB thinks that she's crazy, and as such, she ends up running out of the house without the doll, with her throwing her shoes at him. However, like I said, Coraline is still wondering where the hell her parents are, and likewise, when she goes to the neighbors, specifically Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, about them, well, they can't really provide her any help, especially, though it's also amusing, is that apparently Miss Spink and Miss Forcible were going to go to the theater, and Coraline's parents are going to be their ride, but with them gone, they've got to make other arrangements. But to at least try and help Coraline out, Miss Spink and Miss Forcible give her a gift, as they end up presenting her with a bowl of old taffy that Miss Spink ends up chopping up utilizing, I guess, either sewing needles or chopsticks, until they eventually are broken down into what looks like a triangular rock with a hole in the middle. But with Miss Spink and Miss Forcible claiming that whatever this is, it's good for finding bad things, or lost things, as Miss Forcible says. And while the pair of them argue about it, Coraline just kind of takes the thing and leaves their apartment. As such, without any leads as to where her parents are, Coraline kind of goes into a mild depression and eventually sleeps in her bed, pretending a pair of pillows are her parents. But as she slumbers, the cat ends up getting into her home and ends up waking her up. And as such, when Coraline ends up following the cat to see what's going on, well, she finally gets her answers to where her parents are, as the cat directs her to the mirror in the hallway, and behind the mirror, she sees her parents huddled together in what looks like a frozen area, as they scribble the words, "Help us," on the glass. And as Coraline wants to know where they are, well, she gets her answer as the cat finally directs her to where the doll is. Only now the doll doesn't look like Coraline. It looks like her parents. Yep, the beldam took them. As such, Coraline realizes that if she wants to free her parents, she needs to go back to the other world. And as such, she ends up gearing up, taking with her gardening supplies, her jacket, a hat, her boots, and yes, even that little rock that Miss Spink and Miss Forcible made for her. And, well, she ends up taking the key, unlocking the little door, and goes through the other world. And, well, the cat on the way, somehow, I guess, gaining the power of speech by being in the tunnel, ends up telling her that this is clearly a trap, and if she goes there, she's just doomed. But Coraline says that she has to do it anyway, because it's her parents. So the cat gives her some advice, that if she really wants to get out of there in one piece, then she needs to challenge the beldam, because apparently the beldam has a thing for games. She won't play fair, of course, but even if she knows that Coraline could beat her, she'll want to play anyway, because she just likes them so much. As such, with this bit of advice, the cat ends up running off again as the door on the other side of the tunnel opens up, and what looks like Coraline's real mother appears and happily welcomes Coraline, with Coraline running into her arms and giving her a hug, only for her mother to turn back into the visage of the beldam, still in her scraggly, skinny form. As such, the beldam just kind of laughs at Coraline, and, well, at this point we see that the world is beginning to look a little less inviting, as we see her other father come into the room, and he's looking a little bit more like a pumpkin. Pumpkin man. He's actually, he was made of a pumpkin. But either way, he ends up he kind of helps keep Coraline in place, while a rat ends up coming through the tunnel, having retrieved the key to the door, which the beldam uses to lock said door from their side, cover it up with the hold on one second. Sorry, I was blanking on a word. She covers up the door with a wardrobe, and then she proceeds to swallow the key, effectively ensuring Coraline can't leave. Though the other father also blurts out that apparently that's the only key there is, hence why the beldam doesn't have her own copy. Either way, though, with Coraline effectively trapped in the other world, the beldam takes the other father off so he can go tend the garden, and Coraline is left alone. However, as Coraline wanders around, she hears the sound of someone rubbing on glass, much like what it sounded like when she saw her parents, and she knows that they're close by. Before she can search for him, she's called into the kitchen because the beldam is making her breakfast. And again, even knowing this place is a trap, the breakfast looks fucking delicious. She makes Coraline bacon. There's like a little drink with like whipped cream on top, and she ends up making her an omelet too. That also is made with mushrooms, which is the only unappetizing thing about it. But quite frankly, it still looks good. If it weren't for the mushrooms, I'd want to eat that shit. But either way, Coraline decides to take this opportunity to try and, bait the other mother into a game. Which in this case, the Coraline makes the challenge of the game basically a search game. But what's going to happen is that Coraline is going to look across the world for the ghost kid's eyes and her parents. And if she can find all of these things within the allotted time, then the other mother has to let her and everyone else leave. However, if she doesn't find these things in the allotted time or fails, then Coraline will stay forever and let the beldam sew buttons in her eyes. And yeah, you might notice that I'm swapping between other mother and beldam. It's a toss up. Both work. But the point is, the beldam ends up taking the bait and does agree to the terms. Though Coraline Though Coraline says that she won't agree to anything unless the beldam gives her a hint about where one of the eyes could be, or where the eyes could be. And sure enough, the beldam states that apparently in each of the wonders that she made just for Coraline, there's a ghost eye hidden in plain sight. Though when Coraline asks for a similar hint for her parents, the beldam hushes up. As such, Coraline, realizing that she's not going to get anything else out of her, finally agrees to the terms, though when she goes to shake the beldam's hand, she just vanished. So, yeah, the game is effectively on. As such, Coraline wonders what the hell the hint even means, but she figures it out quickly, as it turns out that each one of the ghost eyes is hidden in one of the wonders that she visited during her previous visits to this world, which in this case are the garden, Miss Spink and Miss Forcible's theater, and Mr. B's circus. And sure enough, Coraline does go to each of these locations, and sure enough, a ghost eye is hidden in each one, though they're well guarded, as all the previous wonders that Coraline had seen upon going to each of these places has now suddenly become a lot more hostile. When she goes to the garden, the plants, instead of just like teasing her and tickling her, are now turning full on ravenous and are trying to eat her. She's attacked by what look like hornets. Miss Spink and Miss Forcible have turned into giant taffy that try and attack her, with their dogs now looking like bats. I'd still hug him. And Mr. B is transformed into a swarm of rats. So yeah, this place ain't a lot of fun. But it turns out Coraline does have an ace up her sleeve. As it turns out, the little rock thing that the real Miss Spink and Miss Forcible gave her really can see bad things. As when she puts it on, she's able to see the world for what it really is. And and through this thing, it doesn't look nice and colorful or whatever. It looks drab, gray, and dark. and the only bits of color that exist there are the ghost eyes. As it turns out, each of the ghost eyes are just like little orbs that are just like hidden in various things. With the first of the ghost eyes acting as the ignition for that praying mantis tractor her other father drove, the second ghost eye being a pearl that Miss Spink or Miss Forcible, I forget which one, wore, and the last ghost eye being a circus ball that one of these circus mites wound up using as part of the show. And one by one, she does get her hands on all of them via creativity or from the help of others. As well, the other father, who is still being mutated, does end up helping her because, well, the other mother made him a little too well, and he basically sacrifices his life to ensure Coraline gets the first eye. Coraline manages to get the second eye away from Miss Spink and Miss Forcible by irritating the bat dogs, again would still hug. And while Coraline nearly does fail to get the last eye, as the circus mice end just essentially messing with her, and one of them manages to escape. At this point they're rats, whatever. But thankfully the cat managed to get the rat before it could escape and gave her the eye back. Although in the midst of the confrontation with the rats, Coraline tried chucking the triangular rock at them, and it just went flying somewhere. As such, Coraline does manage to get when Coraline gets all the eyes, the world itself begins sort of unraveling. As with each eye she collects, the world just turns gray and almost stone-like. We're actually further revealing what this place really is. And upon getting the final eye, the entire world just starts to unravel at the seams, resulting in Coraline and the cat having to just run into the Pink Palace. And upon getting inside, they know that there's only one thing that they have left to confront: the beldam herself. And even as they go towards the den where she is, the Pink Palace is still kind of unraveling around them. Not as bad as outside, but it's clear the beldam is losing power. And upon getting into the den, it looks a lot less inviting than the last time she was here, as it's still bug-themed, but all of the bug-themed wonders are toppled over and are clearly struggling just to move. And in the center of it all is the beldam, who no longer even looks human, as, well, she looks now more akin to a mechanical spider, with her arms now being metallic with sharp fingers, her face having a web on it, her being taller, her body being separated into two sections, and instead of having two legs, she has multiple metal spider legs. It's just, it's creepy. Either way, the beldam congratulates Coraline on finding all of the eyes, though chastises her for bringing vermin with her, i.e. the cat. And so, while Coraline does present the eyes to her, she refuses to hand them over until she can find where her parents are. And the beldam says that yes, that's still part of the game after all, but she ends up throwing more shit in Coraline's face, as it turns out the beldam managed to get her spindly hands on that rock thing, and she proceeds to just chuck it into the fire so Coraline can't use it anymore. However, as the beldam is reveling in that little victory, Coraline gets a bit of advice from the ghost kids, specifically Wybie's grandmother's twin sister. I guess you could say his great aunt. My point is, she states that if Coraline wants to win this game, then she needs to be clever, because even if she does find her parents, the beldam's not just going to let her go. As such, Coraline does get creative. And as such, she tells the beldam that she knows where her parents are. They're behind the little door. And as such, the beldam that first thinks that she's outsmarted Coraline as she goes to the door and even coughs up the key to open it up. But while the beldam is distracted, Coraline does figure out where her parents really are. They're in a snow globe on the fireplace mantle. And as such, as Coraline's about to reach them, the beldam opens up the little door and then just kind of creepily mocks Coraline for the fact that she got it wrong. And while at first she thinks that means that she won as she presents a thread and needle, Coraline ends up thinking fast and ends up just grabbing the cat and throwing him at the beldam. I love it. It's just great. And the cat just claws at her face and even manages to rip off her button eyes, effectively blinding her. As such, Coraline grabs the snow globe with her parents, but the beldam, like I said, is a sore loser and proceeds to completely unravel the room as the floorboards turn into a makeshift web with Coraline at the center. Thankfully, she's able to escape. She's able to get away before the beldam can can just like tackle her in a hug of death. But unfortunately, because of the vibrations spreading throughout the web, the beldam is able to find her. Thankfully, Coraline manages to get to the door, and while the beldam struggles to try and pry the door open and get Coraline, thanks to the assistance of the ghost kids, she's able to close the door in the beldam's face, though not before the beldam managed to get a hand through, which gets chopped off. As such, Coraline ends up crawling through the tunnel with the beldam pounding on the door on the other side, practically begging Coraline to stay, but Coraline manages to make it to the other side and lock the door behind her, as the beldam tries slamming into it. As such, it looks like that everything's calm now, as upon entering the real world again, Coraline's parents are freed. Though from their perspective, they were never captured. In fact, they don't remember a single thing about it. And if it wasn't for the fact they had snow on their clothes, it would look like they weren't captured at all. Though even that fades away rather quickly. And basically, from their perspective, it just looks like Coraline broke one of their snow globes, and that they just got home now. With them both sorry, that was my echo. With them planning to go on a family outing to celebrate the publishing of the catalog. Though Coraline is at least assured that what happened did happen because she still has the ghost eyes. As such, she decides to not bring this up any further with her parents, and so that night, she and her parents are just having fun, spending time together, as now that her parents aren't as busy, they're now happy to spend time with their daughter, and to kind of make up for all the neglect, it turns out that Coraline's mom did go back and buy her the gloves, and it's sweet. And so Coraline's parents tuck her into bed and they leave. Though Coraline does get a sleeping companion as the cat comes in, a little angry that it was used as a weapon against the beldam, but cozying up to Coraline now that she thinks she's safe. As such, Coraline puts the ghost eyes under her pillow and goes to sleep, and sure enough, as she rests, the ghost children's souls are now freed. As before, they looked like kids with their faces just frozen in a state of horror, but now they're golden. And now have halos and wings, signifying that they've passed on. As such, in Coraline's dream, Coraline is thankful that it's all over, only for the kids to reveal that it ain't. Oh yeah, it's over for them. Their souls are free. They can pass on, live in eternal paradise and all that stuff. But as for Coraline, yeah, the beldam still has her sights on her. Mainly because Coraline still has the key, and like they said, there's only one, and the beldam will find it. As such, when presented with this horror, Coraline ends up waking from her dream, and upon realizing the ghost eyes are now broken, signifying the kids' souls are freed, she realizes she's got to get rid of this key as quickly as possible, otherwise she's still going to be a target for the beldam. And as such, while the cat tries to stop her, Coraline ends up getting a blanket and gets her slippers on and leaves the pink palace with the intent of dropping the key into the old well. But the beldam is tailing her, as the hand that she managed to get through the door manages to crawl its way out from that little tunnel, and begins following her as she leaves the apartment building. And so as Coraline gets to the old well and prepares to drop the key down it, the hand ends up tackling her and begins dragging her back to the Pink Palace via the key around her neck. Thankfully, though, Coraline is saved by the last-minute intervention of Wybie, who comes riding in like a Valkyrie on a little motorcycle, and he manages to get the hand off of Coraline. As such, the pair of them end up struggling with the hand, and basically one thing leads to another, and eventually the hand is killed as Wybie manages to drop a boulder on it and completely destroy it. As such, from there, the pair of kids wrap the remains of the hand in her blanket, tie it up with the key, as Coraline had put a string through it to act as a necklace, and they drop it into the well. As such, Coraline thanks Wybie for being there, though she asks why he helped her and why he believes her now. As it turns out, Wybie did a little bit of investigating when he got home, and sure enough, he found a picture of his grandmother and her grandmother's twin sister back when they were kids. And the thing is, when Coraline was ranting about the beldam and her whole plan about the kids she had taken, she mentioned a girl with pigtails. And the kid in the picture is a dead ringer, carrying a doll that looks exactly like her. So yeah, the fact that Coraline knew that at all, and the fact that the doll did not look like Coraline at first, does signify that there was a bit of truth to Coraline's story. Though why he's here now? turns out the cat went to go get YB. And as such, Coraline and YB are just kind of happy that the evil is over, though YB wonders how he's going to explain all this to his grandma. So Coraline just tells him to bring her back by the apartments and they can talk about it. And so from there, the film wraps up as we see Coraline and the denizens of the Pink Palace as they're all gardening together. With Coraline going around bringing them all lemonade. And we see Miss Pink and Miss Forcible just kind of chatting it up and having pizza with their dogs. We see Coraline's parents just kind of socializing and having fun, even though Coraline's mom admits that she doesn't like dirt. But hey, she at least thinks the roses are beautiful. And even Mr. B is trying to take out the roses and plant beets. So whatever. But either way, YB brings his grandmother over and Coraline goes to talk with her, and the last thing we see is the cat resting on the sign for the Pink Palace Apartments before just fading away as it passes by the signpost. So there you go. So yeah, that was Coraline. I still think this is a really damn good movie, and I can understand why it's so widely remembered even now, years later. Because quite frankly, it's just a damn good movie. Like with Nightmare Before Christmas and Corpse Bride, there is so much creativity stuffed into this movie, and it shows in pretty much every frame of it. All the time and effort put into it. This world looks so intricate and creative. And kind of similar to Corpse Bride, there's a clear disconnect between the environments of these worlds. Like, let me put it this way. When we first open up on the Pink Palace, the real world we're presented with is a rather drab one. It's very dark. It's always cloudy out. It's always cloudy and overcast. There's like mists everywhere. There's like just kind of muted colors wherever you look. And while I'm not saying that while there is color in this world, like the Pink Palace is, well, pink, and Coraline has blue hair and a yellow raincoat and all that stuff. It just feels a lot more drained than anything of life, which in turn is what helps make the other world a little bit more appealing, as that world feels a lot more lively and friendly and colorful and welcoming. And even though despite the fact that the other world is practically perpetually in night, I think is a nice little contrast that helps make the other world look so much more appealing compared to the real world. Which in turn also kind of works the opposite way, as when we start seeing the true nature of the other world, we start to see the mystique and wonder begin fading away as we see the darker parts of it start coming out, and that's reflected in the environments. Like, to give an example, let's talk about, there's Miss Pink and Miss Forcible's theater. Before Coraline caught wise to the beldam's ruse, the place looked inviting and amazing and awe-inspiring. It looked like a genuinely nice theater that presented some really creative that created a very talented and inspired show. But then when Coraline goes back to that theater when she's playing the beldam's game, the place is dark, deserted, with barely any lights on, and all the dogs that filled up the seats before and now hanging from the rafters as bats, looking like that they'll attack someone if they irritate them. Which we see as Coraline is waving a flashlight around, and when she flashes it at one of the dogs, it just kind of bares its fangs at her. So it's even and that even extends to the people that live in the other world. Like I said, everything in the other world was not something that the beldam just made from nothing. Everything came from something, and as the other world begins breaking down, we start to see more of those things come out. To give an example, I already mentioned how the other YB was made of dust, and to kind of give a nice bit of FU to Coraline as she went to the other Mr. B's apartment. His remains are just hanging outside of it. So fuck you, Beldam. But likewise, the other Miss Pink and Miss Forcible are made of taffy, and likewise when Coraline sees them, they're a taffy monster. When she goes to Mr. B, it turns out he was actually made of all those rats, and conversely, the mice themselves were actually rats, and even her other father was in reality a pumpkin that was just essentially molded to be Coraline's perfect father. Actually, it's kind of sick in a way, but also creative, as it helps showcase, as it helps kind of add more to the whole "this world is not what it seems" thing. Now, despite everything looking so nice and appealing and sweet, underneath it's all a lie. That everything they see is a fabrication that's just dressed up to look nice, just to try and lure Coraline in. It's really kind of it's very creative and twisted in a way. And likewise, and I know people have brought this up before, but but how the other world changes and how its denizens change does depend on their purpose. Like I said, Coraline, when she was looking for a ghost children's eyes, had to deal with obstacles, and two of those obstacles were the other Miss Fink and Miss Forcible and the other Mr. Bobinski, who both essentially degraded into what the other mother had made of them, and now became full on threatening. But then you have people like the other father or the other Wybie, and the thing is, while their disguises began to fade away as well, they still helped Coraline. Something that I genuinely, the thing is, and this is me kind of essentially repeating stuff that I've read online, but I'm going to repeat it here because I think it's good. The reason why the other father and the other Wybie still helped Coraline, despite the fact that they were also created by the Beldam, was because, well, the other mother was just too good at her job. She made the other Wybie and the other father to be Coraline's perfect companions. The other father is supposed to be a perfect father who will love and cherish Coraline unconditionally, make time for her always, and always be there for her. And likewise, the other Wybie was created to be a friend, someone that Coraline could hang out with, could trust, and actually call someone a true companion. And the other mother provided both of those things. The only problem is, that's exactly what they were. Up until the moment of their demises, both the other father and the other Wybie were more concerned with Coraline's best interests by virtue of what they were supposed to be. The other father genuinely cared about Coraline, and even before the reveal, there are hints that he's trying to warn Coraline about what's really going on in this world. Like like the opening song that he played for Coraline. It's nice and whimsical and energetic and fun, but there are certain lyrics in there that hint at what the other mother plans to do. About how she's a cute, like, there was, like, one lyric is, Coraline is as cute as a button in the eyes of everyone. And basically, or even that whenever Coraline comes around, that the other mother and the other mother's eyes will always be on her. It's a nice little way of trying to warn Coraline, she's gonna put button on your eyes, and she's always watching. It's, again, very subtle and nice. And even later on, he's still dropping little hints. Like when the Beldam tries presenting Coraline with the buttons, what's he say? The needle is so sharp you won't feel a thing, which earns him a kick under the table, which, I don't know, I find that funny. It's just kind of nice to see him kind of being a doofus here, too. But again, that's like him trying to essentially get Coraline to not agree to this deal. He disguises it in a way that it looks like he's just being a dumbass, when in reality it's a subtle way of saying, don't do this, it's not what you want it to be, you're better off just going home. I like that. It's really nice and it's great, which also makes his final death that much more tragic, because the thing is, how he's being controlled to attack Coraline is that the gloves that were from his piano are forcing him to use his praying mantis tractor to attack Coraline. And as he's attacking, he's just going, I'm so sorry, Mother's making me do this, I don't want to hurt you. And so when the praying mantis tractor starts breaking down, he rips off one of the gloves and just grabs the button and just gives it to her. Like, this guy clearly, like, I like that. It's kind of tragic too, but I like seeing that. And the same goes for the other Wybie. Yeah, he plays along with the other mother's scheme to a point, but it's clear that he's mostly doing it just because he's afraid of what she'll do to him. And when it finally gets to the point where he has to choose between his own existence or Coraline, he chooses Coraline, as he helps her escape from her prison, gets her to the door, and likewise, because of these decisions, he's killed by his creator. All because he did exactly what he was supposed to do. And I genuinely like that. It's kind of tragic in a way, but I kind of like that. But likewise, by that same token, part of the reason why the other Mr. B and the other Miss Spink and Miss Forcible were able to be just so quickly turned to monsters is because at the end of the day, they weren't really anything special. They were there just to act as wonders for Coraline, and so were very one-dimensional in terms of personality. So there you go. But like I said, that can't. But getting back to the point I was actually starting all this with, these are all very creative and intriguing, and the disconnect between before the reveal and after is brilliant. When we see all these amazing wonders in the other world, they all look so enticing, amazing, spectacular, and in a way, it does look so inviting. There's just a bit of you that's tempted to want to indulge in all of it. When the other mother bakes the food, it looks delicious. With how welcoming she is towards Coraline, it seems almost too good to be true, which at the end of the day it is. But it seems just so sweet, and the thing is, while there are hints of hostility prior to the reveal, for the most part, everything looks nice. Everything looks friendly. Everything looks like it's just there to give Coraline a good time. And the implication is that if Coraline stays in this world, then she can continue having a good time. And I'll give credit to that. Apparently in the original story, when Coraline first entered the other world, she didn't leave. She stayed there until she learned that she was being trapped there, and then she had to find her way back out. So in the book, it was a one-way trip, and it was her trying to find the exit that created the conflict. Whereas in the movie, it's different. In the movie, as I said through the plot summary, Coraline left the other world at least a total of 3 times before the other mother tried to trap her in there, which, I'm not gonna lie, I think that's smart. But the thing is, if you want to be able to trap a rat, then you need to make it look like that they have to make them think that they're not trapped. It's part of why the Lotus Eater technique works as a story trope, because you can't escape a prison that you don't even know is a prison. And that's why I think it works. And basically, by allowing Coraline to visit the other world and then subsequently letting her go, the other mother makes herself look more kind and considerate, which in turn makes Coraline start to trust her more and be more willing to return. And it's actually real, and I do kind of like that. Yeah, the other mother starts getting desperate near the end when Coraline is not accepting her, when Coraline starts realizing, okay, this place is fucked up, I need to get out of here. But the thing is, at that point, part of the reason why she did that was because at that point, Coraline was starting to see through the veneer of everything and was starting to ask questions. But whereas before, Coraline was just as enraptured, and basically all the Beldam had to do was just set up the dominoes and let Coraline topple them on her own, fall into the trap, be amazed at all the wonders, and likewise, basically all the other mother had to do to bring her back was just leave the door open for her. And then by the time she finally realized by the time she thought that she had her hooked, she locked it behind her. I liked that. It's smart, and I dig that. Also, I probably should mention this now because if I don't, someone else will. YB was not in the original book. Apparently, in the original story, Wyborn Lovat was not a character. He was added specifically for the movie to kind of help give us exposition. And the thing is, part of the reason why he was added, and subsequently there was other changes from the original story, was because apparently Neil Gaiman himself was the one that pushed those. Now, I'm not going to get to talking about Neil Gaiman as a person because, well, all the shit that came out about him in the last few months, if you don't know about it, look it up. Quite frankly, I'm disgusted, though my opinions on his stories remains unchanged. I can hate the artist while still liking the work. But anyway, when the movie was first being made, the script was apparently just like note to note the same as the book. And Neil Gaiman himself said, if you're just going to make it like the book, why not just read the book? And as a result, he's the one that kind of insisted that there be changes, which I'm okay with, I kind of like that. And the thing is, based on what I've heard of the original story, the movie does kind of keep everything in line while still going off in its own direction in certain places, and I welcome the changes, which I guess I'm more willing to because, again, like I said, the movie is how I was first exposed to Coraline, but so whatever. But that's kind of getting off topic. To kind of go back, But kind of going back on topic, kind of going back on topic again with the creativity of the environments. Going back to how I mentioned how the real world looked kind of drab while the other world always looked really nice and welcoming. Well, what I like too is that just as the other world starts turning monstrous when the proverbial wool is pulled off Coraline's eyes, the real world starts looking a lot more inviting, especially at the end when we see Coraline and her neighbors gardening. It's a nice little twist on things, and I think helps kind of set the mood in place to kind of cherish what you have and so forth, make the best of everything. It's really nice and sweet and very creative. And kind of going off of themes, oh my god, this movie's intense. This movie, it's rated PG, but it's a PG movie that likes to push it. It is an intense movie. Now, like I said, the first half of the movie, it's just kind of your standard fun, fantastical adventure as we see Coraline going through the world, as we see Coraline kind of exploring the other world and just having fun and all that. But like I said, after the reveal and after we learn that the whole place is a trap, the intensity of everything is just off the wall. From the other mother transforming into her in-between form between her mother disguise and her true form, to seeing the ghost children and learning what happened to them. Even the tension when the other YB saves Coraline, and likewise when Coraline goes back to the other world and is confronted by all these monstrous things, it's just really fucking intense, and it again makes me angry that I didn't see this movie in theaters, because when I was a kid and I first saw this movie and I saw that scene, I was like, oh my god, what the heck? I was just like at the edge of my seat. And so when everything calmed down, I felt like I had to take a breath afterwards, and basically every time you thought you were safe, there was always something else around the corner ready to jump you, and it kept you on, and it helped keep you on edge throughout the entire movie, and made you want to see where things went, and And likewise, after Coraline managed to escape from the other world, even you begin thinking, okay, good, the bad guy's locked away, Coraline's got the key now, the ghost children are free, her parents are free, it's all good, right? No, it's not done yet. We're not getting off this ride yet, son. As it turns out, the other mother still has an ace up her sleeve, as her hand managed to get out, and she's now actively looking for the key. It's just really damn intense. And by the end, when you finally have that moment of calm, when Coraline, her parents, and their neighbors are just out gardening outside the Pink Palace, it feels earned. It really does feel earned as you see them all just happily enjoying themselves, and you're finally able to take a breath. It's really damn good, and it really kind of helps carry it home. So, on that regard, yes, I think it's really I like that too. I like the tone. I like the creativity of it. And yes, I like the story. Kind of going back to how the creativity of everything, I do like the story that as we're told. As basically at the core of everything, it's a story about a girl having to kind of come to terms with her reality, her parents, and learning that things aren't as bad as she thinks they are, and even if things aren't perfect, that doesn't mean that she can't make it better. And likewise, it allows her to better appreciate the things that she has in her life, and ultimately work to try and improve the things that may not be so great. As by the end, it was kind of partially because of her that this garden party was organized at all, and why all the neighbors were invited. And likewise, and I like that. It's just genuinely nice. And to kind of going off of that, the characters I think are likable. I like Coraline as a main character. She's written like a regular kid, and I think she's fine, but she's written like a very smart kid. She's very agile, very adventurous, and it helps kind of showcase why she would react the way she does. Because Coraline is one of those kids that doesn't really take things lying down. She has a fire in her, and thus is ready to kind of return any energy that's thrown in her face. And we kind of see that showcased when she's in the real world, as when she and her mother are going out, she's constantly pouting and throwing shade at her parents for not really taking her seriously or spending time with her. And likewise, when the other mother tries essentially forcing her into staying in the other world, Coraline's response is basically the rough equivalent of "fuck you, I'm out of here," as she fights tooth and nail just to get out. But likewise, they still show that there is a sensitive child in there, as when Coraline does have moments where she genuinely doesn't know what to do and is at a loss, she does break down. When her parents are taken by the beldam and she has no idea where they are, she just wanders around her house crying and afraid that she'll never see them again. When she thought that she lost the third ghost eye and that she wasn't going to get it back just as the timer was ticking down, which they showcased by a shadow, a button over the moon, she broke down crying because she realized that she was probably doomed. She thought she was probably doomed, only to be saved at the last second by the cat. And then likewise, even after the ghost kids are saved and she learns that it's not over yet, she freaks out a little because, yeah, she put on a brave face, but she was probably pissing her pants. She was so scared. And what kid wouldn't? This thing was like a literal bug witch who wanted to eat Coraline's life just to sustain herself. Who wouldn't be afraid because of that? That's terrifying. So, and I imagine Coraline will be seeing a lot of therapists when she gets older. So I do like that, and the way they write. And the thing is, while she does have her bratty or pouty moments, they don't ever feel like that she really is, well, a brat. You can understand why she is the way she is. Like I said, she's a fish out of water. She and her parents have basically picked everything up and moved to another state, away from everything that she knows, and already that's a bit irritable. And then likewise, the place they moved to is full of eccentric neighbors that Coraline barely knows, and the ones that she does get to know just kind of feel weird to her, like Mr. Bobinski and him talking about his amazing jumping mouse circus. And even Miss Mink and Miss Forcible seem a little odd, to say the least. As they're constantly bickering, and then of course there's the whole tea leaves, and well, the fact that they're able to make Coraline that little rock monocle, which makes me wonder exactly what these ladies saw in their lifetime as actresses that they know these things. So what can you do? But again, combine that with the fact that her parents aren't paying attention to her because they're laser focusing on the garden. It makes for some genuine. You can understand why she is the way she is and why the thought of the other world would sound so appealing to her. Because in the other world, she feels welcome. She feels at home. She's with people that seem to care about her and want to give her attention. And it makes sense. And so it can understand why so while she has enough that she almost falls for the trap, she at the same time, because of her willfulness and her not willing to just take everything at face value, especially when she's shown the caveat of staying in this world, it allows her to start unraveling the tapestry more and be able to fight back. And I like that. It's nice. Again, it makes her understandable, it makes her likable, and makes you feel sorry for her when things do go wrong. And while she does seem to learn her lesson at the halfway mark of the movie, because there are still consequences of her engaging with the other world, because the other mother, like I said, the other mother isn't going to let her go without a fight. It works, and I like that it works. And once again, going off of that, the side characters I think are nice too. Wybie I think he's written to be annoying, but he's not annoying. He's just like a kind of a typical kid who just kind of does his own thing, likes to be gross. And likewise, while he does get on Coraline's nerves, you never really feel like this kid is actively hostile. And Coraline, even at certain points, clearly likes hanging out with him. And honestly, I think that's part of the reason why the other mother created another Wybie, as she took away the parts of him that she thought Coraline found annoying, and just kept the parts about him that Coraline found endearing. His chipper attitude, hanging out with her. And then what I love is that, and to kind of reflect that, the other Wybie does kind of react realistically to certain things that happen in the other world. Like when he and Coraline go to the other Mr. B's apartment, and when they get launched through, at first he looks confused, and then he does what any kid would do when they're surrounded by cotton candy cannons. He begins playing with them. And even likewise, when he and Coraline are at the other Miss Spink and Miss Forcible show, when everything goes wrong, he actively winces, like, ew, that didn't sound pretty. Like, I don't know, I like that. It's nice. It's just kind of nice. And likewise, by the end, when he does help Coraline, it feels nice, and I really do like that. And even Coraline's parents don't come across as unlikable. Like I said, while they are neglectful of Coraline, it's not because they hate her or anything like that, and it's not like they're trying to be neglectful. It's just, like I said, like Coraline, they're in an unfamiliar position, and they're in unfamiliar circumstances that they don't really want to deal with, but have to because of their job. And speaking of their job, they're on a deadline to try and get this catalog done. And so while it's clear that they want to spend more time with their daughter, they kind of need to focus on the big picture here, and that means that they really need to focus on getting this catalog out there. Otherwise, they're not going to have an income anymore, and that's not something they really want to deal with. And again, I like that. And the thing, and like I said, while they do come across a little bit more hostile before the catalog gets published, they do show signs that they do care about Coraline. Her father, while feeling like he's mostly drained, still tries to show Coraline love and support and even jokes around with her. I again go back to how he wanted the magic mud to get rid of his writer's rash. And likewise, when he goes to publish the books, he just kind of lightly teases and smiles at Coraline. It's nice. And again, when the edge is finally taken off, her mother is clearly trying to warm up to Coraline. I mean, yeah, she had a bit of an edge to her when they were going clothes shopping, and she told Coraline, no, you can't get the gloves. But then likewise, when she saw how upset Coraline was getting, she understood it, and she genuinely tried to connect with her and apologize for everything they were doing, and even tried to sell her, we'll be able to spend more time together. It's just that there's a lot going on right now, and while we will eventually have that time, for now we need to focus on other things. I'm sorry, but I do want to make it up to you. It's not a matter of she wants to be neglectful. It's just a matter of circumstance that she has to, and when she sees that this neglect is putting a distance between herself and her daughter, you can tell it's hurting her. And by the end of the movie, when she finally has a chance to breathe, as she, her husband, and her daughter go out to celebrate the publishing of the catalog, and she gets Coraline her gloves, it's clear that she's a little bit of a happier place. She still feels a little grumpy, so to speak, but it's clear she's a lot happier now when now the pressure's taken off, and now that she's spending time with her daughter, than she was before. And I like that. It's nice. It helps showcase that her parents aren't complete and utter jackasses. And kind of going off that same point, I love the Pink Palace denizens. They're all very creative and fun and eccentric, and they make for a nice colorful cast of characters, even if we only know so much about them. And then finally, there's the Beldam. Great villain all around. This is a great combination of subtle and over the top, and it's great. The Beldam's plan in and of itself is a brilliant one. Basically, just lure Coraline in via treasures and treats and what have you, and play the role of a doting mother who just wants the best for her child. And she's good at playing the role. Whenever Coraline went to go see her prior to the reveal, she was always friendly and welcoming and sweet, and always seemed to be very attentive to what Coraline wanted / needed. And it helped when it worked. But then you start learning more of the shadier parts of her. And likewise, when Coraline initially refuses to put the buttons in her eyes, you start to see the mask slip a little, as she seems a little bit more insistent about Coraline getting the buttons, and when Coraline seems to continue being averse to it, she at one point says, well, we aren't worried about it at all. We know you'll see things our way. And it's clear that she's you can tell that she really wants to make sure that Coraline doesn't get to leave. And then likewise, when her darker nature does finally come out, and she starts actively being hostile towards Coraline, she definitely still feels creepy, as when she gets this reveal, it's in her house, so to speak, as she throws Coraline into a cell and effectively puts her on timeout, and it's only because one of her creations turned against her that Coraline was able to get out at all. And again, it's still made clear that in this world, she reigns supreme. She can do whatever the hell she wants here. So it's best to stay off her radar and get the hell out of there. And even then, you're still not safe, because when Coraline gets back to the real world, it's clear that she did stuff behind the scenes just to ensure that if Coraline did escape, she would come back. Which does make me wonder how she exactly did it. Did she escape from the other world? Because the thing is, Coraline left the door open on the other side, so maybe she took advantage of that to sneak on through and grab her parents. So I kind of wonder how that worked. But those questions aside, it still makes her an effective villain. And likewise, when Coraline does fall into her trap, what makes her even creepier, she keeps acting sweet towards Coraline. She keeps acting all nice and almost attentive. She acts when Coraline is yelling at her and asking her where her parents are, she's like, oh, I don't know where your old parents are. Maybe they got bored of you and went to France. It's mocking, yes, but she still acts all sweet and kind to Coraline. It's it's like she's trying to gaslight Coraline into staying, or the fact that or maybe she's just trying to pour salt on the wound with the fact that Coraline is trapped, so she might as well just make the best of it. Like when she makes Coraline breakfast, despite the fact that both are actively aware of what's really going on now. So I don't know. I like that. And even by the end, when we see her true form, she still acts sickeningly sweet to her. And it makes her more chilling. And her design, oh my god, her design. The in-between design between her Coraline's mother form and her true form definitely looks spindly. It just definitely looks more intimidating and off than other ones. And like with all of her other creations breaking down, it's a nice indicator of what she really looks like. And when you really do see her true form, she does just look eerily creepy and threatening. The spider web draped over her face, the sinister voice, and it's clear. And the thing is, her voice actor is the same voice actor. Her voice actress is the same voice actress as Coraline's mother, which makes sense. She had to disguise herself as her mother in order to get Coraline to go along with her. And it's clear that the voice actress is having a ball playing the role, being all sinister and subtle and creepy, but then just going balls to the walls insane when things aren't going her way. Like when Coraline manages to trick her, or when Coraline pisses her off, or when Coraline manages to escape from her world for the final time, and she's just banging on the door trying to get her to come back, saying, "Don't leave me! Don't leave me!" It's like this girl, like this lady is just so fucking insane, but so creepy and threatening. Like every single moment that she's on screen, you really feel that this woman means to do you harm. And what makes it even worse is that even when it looks like that she's been beaten with Coraline escapes, she still is in the game because she managed to get one of her hands out to look for the key, which is conveniently around Coraline's neck. So it really helps create and seeing the hand just crawling around, even though it's not in her domain anymore, it's just genuinely fucking creepy, and it really works for the movie and helps add to the intense atmosphere as you see how desperate this woman is just to keep Coraline in her world. It's just, I love it. So, yeah, when it comes down to it, yeah, I think Coraline is a damn good movie, and I can understand why people still celebrate it. Like with Nightmare Before Christmas and Corpse Bride, the designs for this world are so creative and really help set the mood for what you could expecting. But the real world's feeling sort of drab and colorless in comparison to the other world, which helps explain why Coraline would be enticed to stay in the other world. But then likewise managing to reverse those things rather well as the real world becomes brighter when Coraline finally moves on and decides to make the best of everything, and then likewise the other world turning dark and ominous when when she learns the truth. So again, I like that. I love, going back to that, I love the designs for everything in the other world, both when it's a wonder and when it turns threatening. I like the characters. I love the tension and atmosphere spread throughout, as it feels like as the quiet moments help everything set in, while the intense moments keep you on the edge of your seat and make you scared for what could really happen next. I love the story. I love the story and the overall themes presented into it. The characters are still a lot of fun, and they're very nice, which actually another character I forgot to mention, the cat. Love the cat. He's voiced by Keith David, and that's already awesome. But likewise, the cat's just, likewise, I love how the cat just kind of feels like a detached ally. Like he clearly just sees this all as a game, though he clearly does care about Coraline and is trying to look out for her. So again, like that. But like I said, the characters are all likable. Each of them have nice arcs. There's no one, and like I said, there's no one really in the main cast who feels unlikable, as each of them do have motives for reasons for why they do what they do. And while those things do have unintended consequences and hurt people they didn't mean to, by the end you do still feel happy when everything works out and everyone's back together. So again, I do like that. I do like that, and it's really nice. And the villain is really good. I like that. Like basically overall, Coraline, I think, is just a really damn good movie, and I can understand why it's still well remembered even years later and is still being revisited by people. And ultimately, if you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend it. Find it wherever you can. Get it on DVD, get it on streaming, or hell, go see it on Halloween when it goes back in theaters. I promise you, you will have a good time, because there is not a moment in this movie that I think doesn't work. Everything is done perfectly. It's so creative, so fun, so action-packed, so scary, and ultimately, I think it's just a film that's well worth your time if you haven't checked it out yet. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. I thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I hope to see you next week as we wrap up Stop Motion Spookies, and we look at a more underrated film in Leica's library of movies, with Paranorman.